And welcome to a Spits and Suds preview edition as the Stars coming off a 6-3 win over the Rangers, a nice win. They face another tough competitor in the Vegas Golden Knights, the Golden Knights who took them out of the Western Conference Finals last year. We get a preview, as we always do, from the greatness of Lindsey Brown. Always like to point out, not just Lindsey Brown, former ECAC goaltender of the year, Lindsey Brown. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. It's always a little jarring when I'm greeted with parts of my hockey resume because those days feel very, very distant. But so happy to be back. Really excited to talk some Golden Knights and Dallas Stars because we have a heck of a rivalry going between these two teams, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Before we get there, last night, the Stars announced that on March 16th, they'll be putting up a statue of all-time great Mike Modano in front of the American Airlines Center. And you come from Mount Views, Minnesota, so you have an
Mm-hmm.
interesting perspective. Mo has a lot of history in your home state.
He does, and he actually lives there right now as well. I believe he has a brood of tiny humans. He got a late start on the family front, and so he wanted to raise them in probably the best place to develop young hockey talent, and that's in the great state of Minnesota. But a very important figure to our two fan bases, of course. Uh, the North Stars left before I was born, and so I always heard about the stories of yesteryear and the young talent that Mike Modano was and how unfortunate it was that the team moved and took the ability to watch him play and the Stars out of the eyeballs or the hands of the Minnesota fans is a really sad story, but obviously very deserved. One of the greatest American-born players, probably the best American-born player until Patrick Kane rolled around. And so his impact on the Dallas Stars organization, the Cup win, everything. Really excited for him and to see what he brings for the next generation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was kind of hoping your Vegas Knights would kind of go through a Stanley Cup winning kind of hangover, and we're not
Mm.
seeing that thus far. They are, wow, they're still really good.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see a little bit of a slump in the last handful of games, but they got off to another hot start like they did last year. I mean, last year's start was unbelievable. It certainly wasn't the unbeaten streak that the Golden Knights started with this year, but in terms of what they were able to accomplish early on the road, like their road record last year was wild, and they've run into a little bit more resistance as to be expected when you're the defending champs. The thing that changes is among many things, but everybody brings their best game against the defending champs, right? Like everybody wants to show up the champs. If you're a grizzled veteran that was stopped at the doorstep like the Dallas Stars, or maybe you're a player or a goaltender like Charlie Lindgren is for the Washington Capitals, where you haven't really had much time up in the big leagues, but you step up, you're able to have an opportunity to shut out the defending champions. And it's funny how often that tends to happen when you start to see a little bit of a streak. And they've been shut out in two of their games of this road trip. Dallas is going to be the last game of that first long road trip, and so they're a team that's certainly getting scoring chances and playing a championship caliber game in terms of getting themselves there, but not in terms of finishing, not in terms of execution, whether that's in front of the net offensively or in front of their own netminders. They're just a little bit off right now, but playing against the Stars has a way of tightening up things, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a late night tilt in Dallas, so I think the Frosties will be flown with Thanksgiving the next day. So it should be a
Mm-hmm.
great crowd at the American Airlines Center. I'm always excited when these two teams face off. So, from a scouting perspective, Lindsey, tell Stars fans what they should look out for as far as like, here are the players that are impact for Vegas. Here's a guy that you should watch out for.
Well, it always starts with number 9, right? Jack
Yep.
Eichel. He didn't win the Conn Smythe last year, but he certainly set up Jonathan Marchessault to do that. He's one of the most dangerous passers in this league, but the Golden Knights need him to shoot more, and he's certainly taken that order to heart. It's not necessarily there in terms of scoring conversion quite yet, but he's a true play driver that if he's taking the puck to the net, like I always beg him to, creates a unique offensive weapon in the NHL, right? There's not a lot of people that can effectively stop Jack Eichel. Jonathan Marchessault and Ivan Barbashev when they're rolling and they're able to get those good feelings early. And so those are the big three names. But of course, you have to keep an eye out for Mark Stone. We're very uniquely familiar with his impact on the contest between the Dallas Stars and the Golden Knights. He's off to a little bit of a slower start this year, but he's still so effective, especially with Chandler Stevenson coming back in the lineup. He's not the same without Chandler Stevenson. They really get up and down that ice quickly. They're really good at stretching that neutral zone and catching teams on the rush. There's been a lot more rush-heavy goals for the Golden Knights this year. It seems like Bruce Cassidy's given a little bit more creative freedom. And so you're looking out for number 9. You're looking out for 61. You're going to need to look out for number 71. He doesn't look like the flashiest player, William Karlsson, but not only is he a shutdown defender of a center, but he's been the guy basically carrying the offensive load for the Golden Knights in the early goings of the season. He does that a lot, but he's a guy that they're going to probably stick on the top line. Like you'll probably see him playing against Robertson, playing against some of the best players for the Dallas Stars, which is, quite the decision for Bruce Cassidy to make because it is such a strong team, but he's going to be out there taking defensive faceoffs and being a scoring chance. And then 28 in terms of the fourth line scoring. The Golden Knights have an excellent fourth line in terms of a scoring threat. William Carrier had a career high in goals last year. He is he can snipe, and he's an absolute bull in the China shop. And so just be careful in terms of that disruption and getting caught maybe with too many guys looking below the goal line because you just don't perceive them as big of a threat in the fourth line. And then defensively, there's again a little bit more of a green light from Bruce Cassidy to get a little bit more involved with the offense. We saw them take such a step in a different direction last year where defense stayed home. Like the year prior, it was the Alex Pietrangelo show because so many guys were injured. Now he's jumping up and rushes a little bit more. So that creates, some odd man opportunities with the right heads up play, or if you're looking at a line change, especially in the second period where you can catch people on the wrong side of the ice. But he's certainly somebody that's jumping up. And then Shea Theodore, number 27, he's been entrusted with a lot of the responsibility to start the season because there's been injuries on the Golden Knights that they've been dealing with mostly in their defensive core. So it's been a lot of Shea Theodore. But when he's asked to do too much, his defensive game suffers. And so you can certainly pressure him into some bad situations in the right spots.
I find Theodore highly underrated. He's not talked about, as far as really, really good defenseman in this league as far as nationally, and I think he should be. I do like him on the rush, and I understand he can be caught. The other thing I love is the embrace that Eichel's had for the city of Las Vegas. It's almost forgotten the trials and tribulations that he went through in Buffalo, and it just seems like he's found a home. He's comfortable there. And, I guess my question to you is, like, fan base wise, are they hungry for another one, or is it still electric? I mean, it is one of the better atmospheres I've ever been in as far as a game atmosphere. And has that been taken to a next level?
That's a curious question because obviously the players are hungry for another one. We love championships in this town. The Golden Knights won the Las Vegas Aces are back-to-back champions. I mean, the Raiders have an outside chance to get into the playoffs. I mean, we won't get too crazy there, but there's an expectation. And the thing is like that was there before they won the cup. That's kind of what happens when you have the first introduction that they had in their first season. And so last year, finally getting to that pinnacle, returning most of this roster back besides Riley Smith. Even for me, because I'm so much more focused on football to start this year, it's kind of like, well, we'll see in a few months. Like once the second half of the season, that's when it's really going to matter because you assume that business is going to be taken care of. I mean, they're just so talented. They know the way now. You're not doing the first season where you're trying to prove like, I'll play hard for you, coach. I'll play responsible for you, coach. But this is a different dynamic, right? You can't just repeat everything. And so you have to find a new way to exist because it's not the same year. And in a lot of ways, I think they've struggled with that outside of that winning streak to start the season when they were just running so hot. Everybody was scoring. Their shooting percentage was way high. But now, like every other team in the NHL, you're going to have moments of adversity. And how do you respond in those? And right now they're kind of middling. They're kind of middling. They're giving up goals. They're scoring some goals. They're getting shut out, but then they're kind of close in those games too. And so I haven't really seen that identity carved out between this year's Knights and last year's Knights. And I think the fan base helps and is also part of that, if that makes sense, because it just feels like a continuation. And so I don't know if the hunger is there as much as that we were expecting to go to the buffet anyways. The hunger doesn't matter. Like, we know, like, we're going. It's Vegas. Like, that's the assumption. We'll make room for it, whatever it is. We're gonna have a great experience doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, kudos to the LA Kings.
Mm.
They are having a great season, and so Vegas has some tough competitors in that West. So it'll be fun to find out. I do like the sweaters that released, Lindsay.
How about that with the sneaky way of having them accidentally leaked through? I know that Seattle did it through an NBA team.
Yeah.
And then the Knights, I think it was on AEW Wrestling. And I was like, this is one of the smarter moves I've seen associated with the NHL in a while. And it's a very low bar. It's a very low bar. But in terms of like the BS that they bring on themselves and the terms of how they handle like human beings and everything else, that's one side. But then if you look at the NHL as a business as well, it's not exactly a team or an entity that is forward thinking, especially in today's sports realm. And so I thought that was a very underrated move. I'm still conflicted about the jerseys, although I don't think I've really liked any of the Golden Knights jerseys that they've put out in terms of being like obsessed. Like, I love this already.
Yeah.
But it's simple. It'll be readable, which is important because sometimes you get too many bells and whistles on those special games. But it's gonna be a heck of a tilt because as much as the LA Kings are there, the Seattle Kraken are right there as well.
Yep.
But it is weird with how Edmonton has started as poorly as they have.
Crazy.
And then you have Vancouver doing what they're doing. You're like, okay, I guess. Like, we'll see how this division turns out.
Yeah, it looks like the Norris Trophy's already heading toward Vancouver, and we're not even halfway through the season.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and they're scoring in bunches, and I mean, it's good for hockey that Vancouver's doing well. But I watched them against the Stars, and I was like, wow, 5-on-5. At least in that one game, they were better than the Stars. Just up and down the ice, getting past the defense, and yeah, it's a tough division that you guys are in, but we're in a tough division too. We got the Avs, and yeah, it's the West is tough.
Yeah, well, and we all know that the West comes with a different type of personality in terms of what's expected and physicality, what's expected in the playoffs. And so I think we're in one of those years where we might see a couple of teams pop up that we didn't expect. And that's the ultimate sign of parity, right? Like, how far off are most of these teams that we would consider as bottom dwellers? Like, how far off are teams like the Detroit Red Wings or the Ottawa Senators or the Buffalo Sabres that we've all been waiting for the last couple of years to be like, is this the year they finally do? And if it is, somebody's going to drop out. Somebody's going to drop out. But it's not going to be either one of our teams. It's teams like Minnesota that have questions. St. Louis, I have no question that they're awful. Like, there's no question. I thought I was going to see more out of Nashville this year. They've been garbage. I'm disappointed in that start as well. I really thought, I was like, Ryan O'Reilly there. Man, you get Duchene out. You get what's his face, who's now out in Colorado as well. How's Duchene been for you guys? Like, that's kind of the perfect fit. Bottom six.
Best player on the ice for the Stars. It is sick.
You don't say.
It is sick, Lindsay. And I think, I don't know if many would argue with me. Like, he has made a massive difference. Tyler Sagan's a different player on that line. Mason Marchman's a different player on that line. Like, he's making those similar to what Wyatt Johnston did to Jamie Benn. He's making Sagan and Marchman that much better. And just what I'm so shocked about with Duchene is he's become a much better two-way player. And he's going into the corners hard, and he's using, like, I knew Matt Duchene, like, it's not like he was a small guy, but I never saw Matt Duchene in his physicality. And I'm not saying like checking someone hard into the boards, but just grinding in the boards, winning the puck, and then the passing ability. He is just absolutely taken this. I mean, Stars fans want to re-sign him already. I mean, he's on a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the Pete DeBoer offense just fits his style really nice.
Well, that's glad. I'm happy to hear that because I think Duchene has been one of those players where you never got as much out from him as you think that he was capable of, right? And I think there's probably maybe he's just a little bit longer of a maturation process because when you're picked as high as he is, there's an expectation of a certain style of play. And I just don't think he was ever as gifted offensively to be that finisher, right? That to be entrusted the responsibility to be one of the top two guys to get at everything going. And now that he's on a team like Dallas, playing, lower in the lineup, but not entrusted to be that superstar. And it's not even like Tyler Seguin has that pressure anymore, or Jamie Benn. Like, the fact that you guys drafted so well and have had the best infusion of young talent in the last 5 years out of anybody in the NHL changed the whole trajectory of your team's window.
Yeah.
And so when you have that, and then he's able to step in, take even more pressure off of the guys that were like Tyler Seguin, who I know has had to change a lot about his game because his hips just can't hold up anymore, right? Like, it's just too much abuse.
Yeah.
And you just get a little bit off, and then everybody's like, are we frictionless right now? Are we on a hoverboard right now? Like, you feel like Jake Ottinger plays, right? You're like, everything's just so smooth and clean. It just, they're a scary team. And if for Duchene to fit in as well as he has, that should put the rest of this conference on notice, because Dallas was this close last year.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm Vegas, that's the line that I'm worried about most, as crazy as it seems, because they made a line change last night, and it's because 5-on-5, Pavelski, Robertson, and Hintz weren't getting it done. So they moved Robertson down and Jamie Benn up with Hintz and Pavelski, and that was the line of the game. And then Robertson's now with Wyatt Johnson and Dodonov. So, and Dodonov's kind of off to a slow start as well after signing a 2-year deal. He's a former Vegas guy.
He's a really interesting weapon in the DeBoer
Yeah.
system as well, because obviously he's had a lot of success with him. And I don't think that Vegas ever utilized him correctly. And I don't think there's a lot of power plays in general in this league that could utilize his skill set correctly, because he's really good in a soft area of the slot. Like, he's very whippy when he moves around. Like, he's very good at moving around, and just, he has that lower center of gravity too, and he's smart enough, or at least he's done the work enough to always have his stick in a shooting position. And so whenever I see people, if they have a power play, you have your overload, you have your umbrellas, but then you have certain plays like a Nathan McKinnon where he'll drop in from the top, right? He'll drop in from the top of the zone and take the slot head on. Like, I'm not saying they should do that with Dodonov, because he doesn't have the command for respect like a body Nathan McKinnon does, but he can sink a little bit lower than what you would typically like your defenseman to be set up as, and you can use that as a different outlet pass and a quick shot at that. And the NHL is such a copycat league. Like, sometimes just a different setup is going to yield you higher results, because people are like, what do we do here? Like, what do we run? And the confusion that could happen. And so I'm not sure if they're utilizing him in that way, because they have so much talent in other places, but that can be a target 5v5. You just need the right chemistry around it, but he's not the top of the pecking order to get figured out either. So like, it's you got to pick your battles.
So we haven't talked after the first game, and I just wanted to see, are we good with this Jamie Benn, Mark Stone thing handled on the ice with the first game? Because it was kind of funny, because a lot of people around here, Lindsey, were like, it's good to see Jamie Benn trying to rile up the players, by getting a fight. I'm like, that's exactly not what happened. He was asked to fight, and, you settle it on the ice, and that's what he did.
Yeah, I think it's settled. These are two, the leadership on both these teams are veterans, and there's, once you have that fight, it's done. It should be done. That's the way it goes. Because if you're carrying grudges that much longer, I mean, there would be bloodbaths all over these ices every night. Like, there's a bad hit almost every single night, or you caught me up high. And so I don't anticipate anything. But these games are always very chippy. And sometimes it's good enough to say, well, if you're going to go to the box, then take a member of the other team with you. I don't know if that's good enough for the Golden Knights right now, because their power play is sinking them right now. And they're getting into a lot of extracurriculars with other teams, and maybe it's, lower level teams that are deciding to try to muck it up and try to beat them that way. I don't anticipate that being the strategy for the Dallas Stars, because you guys can beat the Golden Knights straight up because they're so evenly matched. But they're not scoring on the man advantage often enough. And we know that the Golden Knights have some seriously deeply rooted trauma that is due to partially to your Stars, of moments where they go, we can't score. And the longer those go on, the higher likelihood it is for you to develop bad habits and neural pathways that might take, a few too many extra steps to try to unravel over the course of the season. So they need to get healthy on that quickly.
Okay. That's an amazing preview. Thank you. Lindsey Brown, you are awesome. One final thing. You think we'll see Hill in net tomorrow night?
Oh, good question. I would think so, but I'm not sure about the rotation. Cassidy has always been like, we have it planned out for the first handful of games. And, I would personally think that Hill is probably the better of the two to play the Stars. He's handling his rebounds a little bit better than Logan Thompson is right now, but I think the Golden Knights need to play better defense in front of these guys. They're not clearing out in front as effectively as they were last year. And that's going to help out whatever netminder is in there for the Golden Knights, because that's what their entire defensive zone is predicated on. So best of luck. Hopefully our defense shows up. Otherwise, I'm not sure.
And we'll see Ottinger in net tomorrow night for the Stars, as he got a load management night off last night. So we'll see Jake Ottinger in net Wednesday against the Vegas Golden Knights. Lindsey, you are awesome. Spits and Suds fans, follow Lindsey Brown on Twitter. She played the game. She knows the game. I keep telling people this is the person to talk to when it comes to Vegas. You're a beast. Have a great holiday.
Thanks, you too, friend.
All right, and thanks for listening to a Spits and Suds preview of Dallas versus Vegas.